All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Fantasy Fanatics Podcast. I'm your host once again, James, and I'm joined once again by Nate. What's up, man?
So,
All right, in today's episode, we got one last division preview for the NFL for fantasy football in 2022, and it's going to be featuring the two divisions. It's going to be the AFC West and the NFC West, two really stacked up divisions. Definitely preview that. And everything going on there for fantasy. Then we'll hop right into some everything NHL. We'll talk about the Stanley Cup Finals. It's currently going on right now, not specifically as we're recording, but the entire finals has been through 4 games so far. So we'll definitely talk about that. And then we'll just move right into big time basketball to close it out. The NBA draft round 1 is currently going on as we're recording. So hopefully by the time we get there, the entire first round will finish up and then we can definitely recap. So how does that sound?
sounds good.
All right, let's just hop right into it. I will start with Fanatics football and we'll start in the AFC West. Let's get to the Denver Broncos. Let's get to their outlook for fantasy. We'll start at quarterback. Of course, they acquire Russell Wilson from Seattle. It looks like he seems to be the 10th quarterback going off the board on average in most fantasy leagues. I guess, how do you feel about Wilson this season?
I mean, he does have potential to be a first rounder for sure, especially considering the depth around him in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, what I've said is I think 10 might be his floor because, I mean, if Denver decides to let Russ cook that he wasn't able to in Seattle, he could pretty much blast into like top 5 consideration. So I think you're getting him at a good spot. He's definitely a QB1 in fantasy for sure. I definitely think if Denver's offense sort of shifts and just let him cook a little bit, I definitely think it'll be beneficial. But I guess from what we saw last season, it was very run heavy. Of course, they bring both running backs back, Javonte Williams, who emerged as the starter late last season, and then Melvin Gordon, who had pretty much just as good stats, if not better in other categories as Javonte. Of course, Javonte is the younger guy, so he's going to be a bit more valuable and he's expected to get the bigger workload. Javonte Williams is going off the board in half PPR around the 13th spot, so just at the top of RB2. And then just going down, taking a look at where Melvin Gordon is, he's going off at around 34, so at the bottom of like RB3 in standard leagues. I guess, what are your thoughts on this backfield?
I feel like talent-wise, they should be draftable. It's kind of gonna depend on how they structure the offense. So, honestly, for Melvin Gordon, you might want to take him a little bit lower if you can.
Yeah, I think Javonte Williams should be getting more opportunities this year, unless Melvin Gordon completely blows things out of the water. But I think with the fact that he is getting older, it's going to be less easy for him to do that. Javonte Williams, I think his ceiling could be like a Nick Chubb type, where he's like in a split backfield, but yet he's a really good runner. I'm kind of like feeling that could happen. So I think you're good getting him as like an RB2. Maybe don't reach for him as like your number 1 RB in case Melvin Gordon does like take off, but he's like a pretty solid RB2 for me. And then I guess moving to Melvin Gordon, he's a good flex option. If you can get him outside RB3, like I think you're going to have a really good deal for him. But yeah, if you get him as your 3rd running back, you just got to hope he gets the snaps. So that's all I really have to say about that. I'll get to wide receivers now. There's a lot of names to pick from here. You got Cortland Sutton, you got Tim Patrick, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got KJ Hamler. I think those are like the 4 main guys. I don't really see anyone else outside of that getting a lot of targets, but 4 guys is still a lot. So I guess we'll go through and see where they're all located among like expert rankings here. I don't think you get one until 21, and that's Cortland Sutton. You get Jerry Jeudy around like 24. So 2 wide receiver 2s, and then you go further down, and then you don't see another Denver wide receiver until Tim Patrick at 61. And then I don't see KJ Hamler here. You probably have to go quite a bit further to sort of get to him. He might not even be draftable at this point, so I probably wouldn't even take a look at him. He's probably just a good waiver wire guy. If there's an injury that happens, he's definitely talented enough to get a role with this team. Yeah, he's not in the top 100. So yeah, I guess give me your thoughts on these wide receivers.
Thinking Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy, they should be pretty solid wide receiver twos, especially considering Russell Wilson's talent. So they should be getting some, I guess, quality targets. For Tim Patrick, you might want to take him at the end of your draft just in case he gets good production, because Russell Wilson is going to have really accurate targets. So he could get some quality targets even if he doesn't get that many. So I think maybe at the end of your draft.
Yeah, I mean, with Sutton and Judy, I mean, they should be like the Lockett Metcalf type that Wilson had in Seattle, like the 1-2, and then Patrick. It's kind of hard to see how many targets he's going to get. I know he caught a lot of touchdowns last year, but different quarterback situation. Obviously, they had Teddy Bridgewater. So, yeah, it's really hard to sort of gauge where these guys are going. As we say, for a lot of teams, take players as low as possible just to get value. So if they drop in your draft, definitely picking them up as like a wide receiver 3. And then for Tim Patrick, if you can get him at the end of your draft, I think that's the most ideal thing. Let's get to tight end now. Of course, Noah Fant going in the Russell Wilson trade. So Albert O is probably going to be that main guy. And it looks like in most drafts, he's going around tight end 17. Yeah, I think he's a solid backup. He might be one of those guys that Wilson targets, in third down situations, red zone, that kind of thing. So I think he's properly ranked. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of like him for backup tight ends. I feel like that's kind of his best value you can get if you can get him there. He's probably gonna have like decent production for a tight end too, and then you'll have some really good spikes. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. I definitely think you draft him as your backup. He's one of those guys that could have a breakout season and could even replace your starter, or you could throw him into a flex spot. Definitely can play him on bye weeks as well. So I definitely like where he's going. I guess getting to the Broncos, it's a tough division this year. I know it's putting you on the spot, but I guess where do you see them finishing in this division?
This is basically AFC North Part 2. So basically any team can finish anywhere this year. I would say the Broncos, just because it's their first year with this roster, I'd say maybe third.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good roster. I understand your concerns, I guess, with them not all being together, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think it is going to be tough to sort of gauge where this team's going to finish. Yeah, and I don't know. You have them at third. I might even have them lower than that. I might actually have them at fourth. It's a tough division. I think it's going to take an injury to knock a team to fourth. So I'd say that unless if they don't have any major injuries, I think they're going to finish higher than fourth. But as of right now, I mean, if all teams are healthy, I know adding Wilson's big, but I mean, is the rest of the team going to be able to keep up? Because all the other teams in that division added as well. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm going to put them at fourth just for now. Like you said, flip a coin on all these teams and see where they land at this point. But yeah, we'll get to the next team, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, this team, they stay good every year. I don't know what it is about this team. Well, we'll start at quarterback. We'll start with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's probably one of the best players in the NFL right now. And I mean, he's going as like the third quarterback off the board. You could take him at number 2 if you want, in my opinion. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, if you see Patrick Mahomes off the board, you might as well just take him because he's pretty much like guaranteed fantasy points.
Yeah, I know he had a struggling point early last season, but once midseason came, he was right back into form. You're not going to go wrong with him. I mean, he has Travis Kelce. I mean, we'll get to all of his weapons, but Yeah, he's just really solid overall. We'll start at running back. Of course, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is there. He's should be healthy to start the season. Of course, you got Ronald Jones just coming from Tampa. Jerick McKinnon's still there. I don't know how much he's going to factor in. But yeah, let's get to where these running backs are sort of ranked. I definitely want your opinion on that. I don't know, like there's three guys in this backfield. I guess before I get to where they're ranked, I guess, do you think that they're all going to have to split? Do you think that CEH is finally going to get like the bulk of the workload? I guess, what are your thoughts?
I'm guessing that CH gets the bulk of the workloads. He might have to share a little bit with Ronald Jones. I'm not really seeing, I guess, Jerick McKinnon or Derek Gore having, I guess, like as many snaps as either Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Ronald Jones. So I'm thinking you probably want to target CH the most.
Yeah, I think for me, CEH is probably still that main guy. Like, I don't want to just like write him off. Oh, just because, he's been banged up or maybe he hasn't performed as well. I feel like with Tyreek Hill leaving, he's sort of going to be like that main guy. I mean, just looking at I guess where we have everyone, like CH is going around the like what the 28th or so spot in running back ranking. So he's like I guess a high like RB3 essentially. You could have some value there just because, like he could be like a guy that ends up getting a big workload and then you get value on him. Um, I don't know, like, I guess, what are your thoughts on that? And I guess, yeah, maybe we should look at where the others are ranked. So CEH is around 28th. And then I guess just going down further than that, you got to go a lot further than that. You got Jerick McKinnon at 79. There's a chance I might have missed Ronald Jones. Derek Gore's at 106. So yeah, I did miss Ronald Jones. He's probably somewhere further up. Yeah, he's at number 40. So you got 28, you got 40, and then the other two are probably not draftable. So I guess what are your thoughts on that?
I guess just looking at the list, I feel like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I feel like he could even be like a low end RB2 just on how his ceiling works. Like you said, he could end up having more production. And just looking at the depth chart, I don't think outside of Travis Kelce, the other wide receivers, they're good, but you wouldn't necessarily want to target them every time. So there is a chance that the running backs could get some more work. We could see some catching from the running backs as well. So depending on who gets to catch, you might even want to get Ronald Jones maybe at the end of your draft.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to get Ronald Jones at the end of your draft, considering people are taking him as like an RB4. So like you said, I'm not really sold on him that high because I don't know if he'd be a strong flex option week to week. So yeah, I think you're right. CEH should be that guy. But yeah, we will get to wide receiver now. It's mostly new guys here. Juju Smith-Schuster comes in. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Of course, McCole Hardman's still there. Josh Gordon, we don't know what kind of snaps he'll be getting, if any. And then, of course, they draft Sky Moore this year. I guess just getting to where these guys are ranked. Yeah, you don't have a lot of these guys early. Juju Smith-Schuster is around like 32. So he's like a wide receiver 3. And then you just keep going down after that. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is around 54. Sky Moore at 57. McCole Hardman at 64. So you got all these guys like around that like wide receiver, like 5-6 area after that. So I guess what are your thoughts on Juju Smith-Schuster and then the rest of the guys?
I think they could get a bit of a boost, mainly just because of how talented Patrick Mahomes is. So could maybe get, I guess, Juju Smith-Schuster like maybe a few spots higher than he is. Like he's right in the middle of like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Gabriel Davis. He would potentially be like around like Elijah Moore, just because of how talented Patrick Mahomes is. Valdez Scantling, he's not necessarily the most consistent wide receiver. He has pretty high ceiling, but he doesn't always play to his potential. So that's something that you want to keep in mind when you draft him. So I try to draft him a little bit lower. He has a high ceiling, but yeah, maybe at the end of your draft. And I guess for Cole Hardman, it's kind of hard to say. I'd say also maybe at the tail end of your draft.
Yeah, I think Juju Smith-Schuster, if he's going to be the number one guy, I mean, Tyreek Hill was always a wide receiver one. He might have the chance to be a wide receiver two, just with how talented he is. And if Mahomes is targeting him consistently, definitely think he'll be solid this year. The others, like, just take your pick. I don't know who's going to get the targets. Maybe Sky Moore might have a chance just because he is a rookie. But other than that, yeah, they're all bunched up together in rankings. So I understand why. And then for tight ends, this one's a no-brainer. Travis Kelce, he's Mahomes' favorite target. He's been the best tight end in fantasy for years. If you take him early, like, it's pretty much it's set in stone. You just throw him into your lineup. You don't got to worry about it.
Pretty much. I guess the top three guys, Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, even Kittle and Waller, if you take them, you might as well just take them if you see them and still get some good work for you.
Yeah, like Kelsey's putting up receiver-like numbers. He should be the number one tight end off the board easily. I guess looking at the Chiefs, yeah, it's kind of tough to rank this division with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they're always going to be a playoff team for the most part. Their offense is still really solid. I guess, where do you have them in this division?
I mean, honestly, it's hard to tell because the wide receiver core is a little bit different. They don't have Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill was like a major weapon on this team. So, I mean, I want to rank them first, but I'm thinking, yeah, I might as well just put them first.
Yeah, I want to rank them first too because, I mean, even if they get off to a rough start, they somehow just find a way to get first place. Yeah,
It's hard to say.
yeah. You know what? I'll just put them at first. That's fine. I'll leave them there for now. Obviously, things could change with this team, but I mean, they have such good coaching. They still have good defensive pieces here. Their offensive line is really solid. So, I mean, like, you definitely got to just keep them at first. And I mean, with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, he's an MVP candidate every year. So, yeah, I'll put the Chiefs at first. Let's get to the next team, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders. Um, yeah, I mean, this team, they made the playoffs last year. They were really solid, especially in fantasy. We'll start with their quarterback, and that's Derek Carr. And I mean, he surprised a lot of people. He was very fantasy relevant for most of the season. He's being taken around the 14th spot. So he's like a QB1 in deep leagues, maybe like a backup quarterback in more shallower leagues. I think that's a good spot for him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a backup in shallow leagues is a pretty good spot for him, mainly just because he doesn't run too much. He's mostly a passing quarterback, so he'll get you passing yards and he'll get you touchdowns, but he doesn't have enough rushing yards to be a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you on that. He's got some more weapons, though. We'll talk about those. We'll start with the running backs. Josh Jacobs is still there. You got Kenyon Drake still there. That's probably going to be the 1-2. So I guess looking at where these guys are going off the board, Jacobs is going off around like 22, so he's like an RB2. And then looking where Kenyon Drake is going off the board, I think you got to go down a bit. Yeah, he's going off around 61. I don't think that's too bad. I think you can get value with him. I guess just drafting him onto your bench. I think both guys, you get a bit of value where you draft them. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is pretty accurate, especially when you consider that this is a more pass-heavy team. So they're not going to get the most opportunities to get some big plays, but they probably will get some big plays somewhere in the season just because of how talented they are.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like you said, passing offense. Let's talk about the receivers. Devontae Adams, of course, coming from Green Bay, he's going to be the main guy. Hunter Renfro out of the slot, he was really solid last year. I know Demarcus Robinson's there from Kansas City, but I don't know how relevant he's going to be. I think it's going to mostly be Adams and Renfro. I guess give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm guessing you'd probably want to target Devontae Adams as your first choice, and then Hunter and Rose your second choice.
Yeah, I mean, we know Derek Carr loved Hunter Renfro last season. Um, and then I guess we know that, him and Devontae Adams had that like connection from college. So honestly, it's tough to say. I think that wherever you draft Adams might be too high, and then wherever you draft Renfro might be too low. I don't know if that makes sense in it, like with the way I'm trying to say it, because Adams is going off at like number 4 right now, and then Renfro is kind of going off like a lot lower than that. I think you can get him at like 37. So like that's like top of wide receiver 4 in standard leagues. I feel like that's way too low.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Derek Carr, again, he's going to be slinging the ball a lot. I know there's a lot of weapons on offense this season, but Hunter Renfro got a lot of targets last season. That shouldn't change too much, even with Devontae Adams being there. So, um, again, Devontae Adams is top 5 in terms of talent, but could be a little lower. But again, the 6 and 7 are like CeeDee Lamb and Deebo Samuel, so maybe that's why he's still in the top 5.
Yeah, I think so. I think Adams is really talented. It's just I feel like Renfro definitely could still get a lot of targets. I guess moving to tight end, another guy who's going to get a lot of targets is Darren Waller. He's the number 5 tight end off the board. Yeah, he's a solid tight end 1. He's going to get targets. He's just that big machine out there. I guess what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just like with Kelsey, Mark Andrews, if you see Waller off the board, on the board, you pretty much have to take.
Yeah, for sure. And solid offense overall. Let's look at the team. We know how tough this division is to rank, but where do you see the Raiders finishing in 2022?
You know, looking at this roster now, I probably should have changed my choice for Denver, but I already said Denver was third, so I'm gonna have to unfortunately put them at fourth.
Honestly, I could see them finishing anywhere in this division at this point, even fourth. But yeah, I think I'm going to put them at third. I kind of want to put them higher. I know they did finish second last year, but I feel like there's one team that got better than them, and we're going to get to them. But yeah, this team's good, I feel like, but they're not better than like 2 of the teams in this division. So yeah, I'm going to put them at third. I definitely agree with you. They do have a solid roster. And I guess we'll get to the next team. That's the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's start at quarterback here. Justin Herbert is going off as the second quarterback off the board. I guess what are your thoughts on that?
That's a really big jump. I mean, I can kind of see it, mainly just because he does everything pretty much. So just based on his production, he could actually finish somewhere in the top 5.
Yeah, take him in the top 5 for sure. Can I stomach him at number 2? Maybe not. But yeah, he is definitely talented enough to be like a Josh Allen type performer in fantasy. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Let's get to the running backs. Austin Eckler is there. Of course, they draft Isaiah Spiller, Joshua Kelly still there, Larry Roundtree. It looks like Eckler's going off the board at third overall. He had a really solid year last year. Definitely had him in some leagues, and he was solid. And then I guess for the next running back for this team, you're going to have to go all the way down to number 47 to get Isaiah Spiller. Um, he's going to get some snaps. I feel like I just don't know how much he's going to get in his first year, but yeah, I love Gibson near the top, maybe not at number 3, but maybe like top 5, top 6. He should be really solid.
Yeah, I kind of like Eckler. He's really solid, like you said. I don't know about 3 because, again, Derrick Henry is right under him, and he could finish ahead of Eckler. Delvin Cook could also potentially finish ahead of Eckler as well. So, I mean, that's still top 5. That's really good, but I feel like 3 is a little bit too high.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's other weapons on this team. Let's talk about the wide receivers. Of course, Keenan Allen's still there, Mike Williams, Joshua Palmer, Jalen Guyton. I think that's about as far as you're going to go in fantasy. We'll start where they're ranked. Keenan Allen's going off around 11, so late wide receiver 1. Then you go further down, you get Mike Williams around 22, so late wide receiver 2. And then after that, you have to scroll for quite a little bit down into the rankings. Yeah, I'm still going. Joshua Palmer's around like 75th. So yeah, it's probably like a late round guy. You probably don't even draft him at all. And then I'm still going, and I don't see Jalen Guyton yet. He's at 116, so probably not draftable at that point. But yeah, I think I agree. Keenan Allen's a wide receiver 1. Mike Williams is a wide receiver 2. And Joshua Palmer is like a dart throw. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
All right. And now we'll get to tight end for this team. And yeah, this is interesting. They bring in Gerald Everett. Darnold Parham is there. I don't know. I just like tight end was not really a position that was really like relevant as much. I know Jared Cook was there last year, but I don't know how well things worked out. I guess, what are your thoughts on tight end for this team?
I mean, it's going to be hard to say just because there's so many good players there, and tight ends normally they kind of get the scraps in terms of targets. So, I mean, he is a starting tight end, so you should be taking him in the first 2 rounds for taking tight ends. But yeah, it's going to be hard to judge how well he does this season.
Yeah, I think Everett's going off at around like 21. So yeah, he's like a decent backup in standard leagues. In like shallow leagues, you probably won't draft him, and in deep leagues, he'd probably still be a backup. So yeah, he's not really anyone to write home about, but maybe he does have a good season. We'll have to see. Um, yeah, getting to where the LA Chargers will finish in this division. I know they're known for choking a lot, but I really think this team's gotten a lot better. I'm going to put them at second place. I think they can actually win this division, but I'm just not being that bold because we know how many times people have said that about the Chargers and then they just like come up short. So I'll be sort of I guess slightly optimistic, but not as much as I want to be. And I'll put them at second. I know I made them as an early Super Bowl pick as like a reach because I really like this team. I mean, they have a lot of good players. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like, I wanted to put the Chargers first over Kansas City, but Kansas City always finds a way to finish first, and then Los Angeles, they have a really good roster on paper. It looks like they could compete with Kansas City, if not beat them. But for whatever reason, they just they don't have like the it factor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about the Chargers. Maybe this year they'll finally take that next step. But yeah, I really do like the roster. I definitely think that it is pretty solid. Let's get to the next division now, and that's the NFC West. We'll start with the Arizona Cardinals. This is a really solid team. We'll start at quarterback, Kyler Murray. I mean, he's a solid fantasy quarterback almost anyone. I mean, this guy, he always finds a way to put up points every year. He's clearly a QB1 for you if you're going to draft him in fantasy. He even has that like top 5 upside. I guess, what are your thoughts on him?
I think I agree with top 5 upside. I think last year he finished close to that, if I remember correctly. So, and the Cardinals had an amazing first half of the season, so they should have a really good season again.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Kyler Murray's definitely someone that like if you don't get like one of the top quarterbacks, like let's just say you don't get like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, or like any of like those main like top guys that like we just talked about Patrick Mahomes as well. Then Kyler Murray's like one of those guys like that maybe you can get in like the mid tier of like QBs. Like let me see where he's going off the board right now. Like for example, I think he is going off at number 5. So yeah, he's kind of is that like top tier sort of guy. Yeah, it's going to be tough. He really does have that upside. I definitely agree with that to sort of put him in the top 5. But yeah, really solid overall. We'll get to running back now. Looks like James Conner is going to be the main guy. No more Chase Edmonds. Darrell Williams is now there as the backup. I don't know how much he does, though. I think this is James Conner's backfield. And I mean, yeah, he was a guy last year. He's ranked at 15th, but I think you could even take him as like potentially an RB1. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm guessing James Conner's probably going to have the most snaps, so you could maybe take him a little higher than he's listed.
Yeah, I definitely think you can. I think maybe people are shying away from him is because he's had like some injury history in the past, but like, I don't know. I just feel like that he's like one of those guys where it's like we saw how many touchdowns he had last year. And yeah, he was just like amazing. He finished as like a top 5 running back at the end of the year or something like that. I mean, Darrell Williams going off at like 56. He's going to be a bench player anyways. I don't think you need to be afraid to draft Connor. He should be really solid this year. We'll get now to the wide receivers. Yeah, of course, we all know what's happening with DeAndre Hopkins, the suspension. I believe he's going to be out for the first 6 games of the season, if I'm not mistaken. So that really opens the door, I guess, for other players. AJ Green, obviously, Hollywood Brown, who they just acquired, Rondale Moore as well. But yeah, it's really hard to rank these wide receivers just because we don't know how they're going to perform. And then when Hopkins comes back, how is he going to perform? You got Hollywood Brown going off at like 23rd right now. So like a low wide receiver 2. I don't know if I can get there with any of these wide receivers. I think you got Hopkins at 38. And then just going further down, Rondale Moore at 58. And then probably AJ Green's like, yeah, he's at like 79. He's just like a dart throw. How are you drafting these wide receivers?
Honestly, it's going to be hard to tell. I guess it'll depend on your familiarity with the Cardinals system. So if you know where DeAndre Hopkins normally slots, you'd want to take out the other wide receiver. So, for example, if he's normally where AJ Green is, you'd want to, again, you wouldn't want to take AJ Green. You want to take maybe Dale Moore instead, and then you can maybe take DeAndre Hopkins a little bit later.
Yeah, that's probably a good strategy. I feel like if you own Hollywood Brown, you might want to like double up on like Hopkins, or like Rondell Moore and Hopkins would be great together. I think that you've sort of figured that out. Like that's probably a good strategy. AJ Green, I just don't know about him. He's like a guy that should be on the waiver wire, in my opinion, considering his age and his role. So, yeah, definitely a good strategy to go by. I think the guy you should be drafting is Zach Ertz at tight end. I mean, he's the guy where his production shouldn't really change depending on the receivers. Like, I mean, being drafted as like a top 12 tight end, I think he's around like 9th. Yeah, he's a great starter. He was last year. He was in Philly as well. For me, yeah, solid tight end overall.
I mean, honestly, he could have a really good first half of the season, just considering Hopkins isn't going to be playing for 6 weeks. So you're going to need an extra person to throw to. So why not to Zach Ertz?
Yeah, and actually, I'll make a correction from last week's episode. Rob Gronkowski ended up retiring, so please don't draft him unless he comes out of retirement. So I think definitely you should be looking at Cameron Brate in leagues, I guess, if you're looking to draft from Tampa Bay. But that was just a correction from last week's episode because he retired the day after that we recorded that episode. So that's something interesting there. But let's get back to Arizona and where they're going to finish in this division. I guess, where do you see this team finishing up?
It's going to be interesting because they have to compete with the 49ers. 49ers could be a sleeper team, maybe. They have to compete with the Rams. Honestly, I kind of see the Cardinals. They might have kind of like a rough start, but I think they should still finish second.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually put them at third. I like 2 teams a bit better than them this season. But yeah, they definitely can still make the playoffs. This is one of the toughest divisions that they supported 3 teams in the playoffs last year. So they can definitely do it again. Let's get to the next team. That's the LA Rams, your Super Bowl champions. Get to quarterback Matthew Stafford. And I mean, this is a guy, he's solid in fantasy every year. He's going off the board as the 11th quarterback, I believe. So he definitely is a starter in standard leagues. He's definitely a guy that you can just play as your starter. You can have him as a backup in shallow leagues. And yeah, he's a great starter in both standard and deep leagues. Give me your thoughts on Stafford.
I think Stafford could have a higher ceiling than where he's placed. It looks like he is 11th. He could potentially be 8th or 9th, depending on how well the Rams play as a whole.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I definitely think that he's one of the more solid guys that you can get at the quarterback position. Makes a lot of big plays. And I mean, we see him moving his legs from time to time. So maybe not as much as some of the quarterbacks above him, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of quarterbacks that aren't as mobile as him. So I guess the combination of that and like a really big arm, I definitely think that makes him appealing. Let's get to the running backs now. This is going to be interesting. You got Cam Akers there. You got Darrell Henderson. I know one of them had a better first half. The other one was better in the playoffs. I don't know. Like, I feel like both of them are going to be getting opportunities to be able to run. It might be that like alternation that they were doing one game, one of them's better, the other game, the other one's better. And that's terrible for fantasy. But we know how Sean McVay is with all of his strategy and all of that. You got Akers going off the board at 18. So like solid RB2 there. And then I guess if you go down further to find Henderson, you'll get him at around 42. So like middle of the pack RB4. I guess in my opinion, try and get Akers lower and Henderson higher. I guess, what are your thoughts?
That's kind of what I was thinking too, mainly just because we don't know who's going to get what snaps depending on the matchup.
Yeah, and I think that what they did is they ran one guy into the ground the first half of the season, and then they kind of just switched it up after. So he could end up doing that again. So that's definitely one thing you need to keep an eye on. We'll get to the wide receivers. Obviously, Odell Beckham's on the IR, and he might not re-sign. So you still have Cooper Kupp, though. You still have Allen Robinson, and you still have Van Jefferson. I think that's a pretty solid core either way. So Cooper Kupp obviously is going off number one off the board because he's the Triple Crown winner from last year. In my opinion, yeah, he's the first receiver off the board. He should be drafted in the first round of your fantasy draft in standard leagues. And then I guess just going further down, locating these other receivers. It looks like you get Allen Robinson around like 26. So like early wide receiver 3. And then just going a little bit further down to sort of locate where Van Jefferson is. He's going off at around 63. So you're probably looking at like a solid bench wide receiver there. I think they're all pretty accurately priced. Robinson should be able to bounce back considering the injury plagued, really horrible season he had last year. If you're getting him as a wide receiver 3, that's not bad. What are your thoughts on this core?
Yeah, I think wide receiver 3 is good for Allen Robinson. He could potentially finish higher, but I think you're getting good value for him. Van Jefferson, he's probably going to be getting less targets than both Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp, so I think he's accurately placed.
For sure. And I guess getting to tight end, you got Tyler Higbee. He's going off the board around 20th. He won't have competition this year, but I don't know. He's very inconsistent. So I think as a backup, you could take him a little bit higher, but I think he should be a solid backup for you in fantasy.
I agree.
For sure. And I guess just getting to finishing position for this team. I think we're just going to take them to finish first. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Same.
Yeah, you have to. They're the Super Bowl champions. No question about that. All right, let's now get to the next team in this division, the San Francisco 49ers. We'll start a quarterback for them. It looks like Jimmy Garoppolo had surgery, so he might not be ready to start the season. So it looks like Trey Lance is going to be the starting quarterback for them. That is interesting. He's going off the board at 13th. That's pretty high for an unproven quarterback. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is pretty high. I mean, he does have a good roster, or like a decent roster, but I don't know about 13th.
Yeah, maybe take him a little bit lower. He's definitely a solid backup with the potential to break out. I'll definitely say that. So I guess just keep that in mind when you draft him. I guess in terms of running backs for this team, of course, Elijah Mitchell is still there. They drafted Tyrion Davis Price this year in the draft. And of course, Jeff Wilson and Trey Sermon are still there. We don't know how much they're going to be used because at this point, I don't know how the running backs go with Kyle Shanahan and this team. But we'll look to see where they're sort of going off the board. Elijah Mitchell's going off at 24th, so at the bottom of like RB2 in standard leagues. And then I guess if you keep going, you'll probably see another one go off the board. Trey Sermon's going off at like 68. I don't even know how, like whether you should draft them or just wait till the end. Jeff Wilson's like 73rd. Davis Price is at like 80. I think at this point I'm just drafting Eli Mitchell. I guess what are your thoughts?
That's kind of what I'm thinking as well. Honestly, could draft Eli Mitchell a little bit longer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well because we really don't know what's going to go on with the running backs in San Francisco this year, especially if the passing takes off. Because I mean, Deebo Samuel's coming back. We have Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings. I guess seeing where these guys are sort of going off the board. It's interesting because I know Deebo Samuel was being used as a running back last year, but then he sort of expressed the fact that like he doesn't want to be used as a running back. He just wants to be used as a wide receiver. So I think it would take sort of like an emergence from Trey Lance to sort of get him to that like top status as like one of the top wide receivers in the game. So I don't know, maybe Deebo Samuel could see a bit of regression this year. I know he's going off as like one of the top wide receivers in the draft, but I think you might be able to get better value with Ayuk. I don't know about drafting Juwan Jennings, but I guess what are your thoughts on these receivers?
Deebo Samuel, he's talented, but I don't know if he'd finish seventh. I could probably see Mike Evans or Tyreek Hill finishing above him, maybe even Keenan Allen as well. So he could be a little overvalued. I think Brandon Ayuk, you could definitely draft him where he is.
Yeah, and I think Ayuk's going to be undervalued because of his poor start last season. Like I think he's going off at like number 40 right now. If you don't want to take Deebo at like 7th, you could maybe go with Ayuk at 40th. That's like wide receiver 4. You don't even need to play him every week, and there's a chance he could break out. So definitely think that is good value there. And then getting to the tight ends. I mean, it's George Kittle. He's sitting at number 4. He's going to be your starter if you draft him. He's probably the number 1 target on this team if it's not Deebo Samuel. And he's one of the best at what he does. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you pretty much have to draft him if you see him on the board.
Yeah, and there's not really much more to say. Just draft him, set it and forget it. I know he gets injured sometimes, but when he's on the field, he's probably one of the best tight ends in the game, even for fantasy. But let's get to where this team's going to finish in this division. I've got the 49ers at 2nd. I guess where do you have them?
Well, I guess they could be at 3rd. Again, they have the potential to finish 2nd, but just not too sure about, I guess, just the team in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They did finish 3rd last year and they still made the playoffs. So, I mean, that is possible as well. I just sort of, I guess I do see Trey Lance taking the next step potentially, or if Jimmy Garoppolo is more healthy, they definitely could be a solid team. So, I definitely like what I've seen on this 49ers roster. And I guess we'll get to the last team from this preview, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. We'll start at quarterback for them there. As of right now, it's Geno Smith and Drew Lock. At this point, I probably would say I'm not going to draft any. I guess, do you feel the same way?
I mean, I don't know. I think Geno Smith had a really good season last season, but no, I still don't want to draft him.
Yeah, I mean, when they're going off at 34th and 39th, Lock at 34 and Geno Smith at 39th, yeah, they are best to be left on the waiver wire in pretty much every format. I guess getting 2 running backs. Looks like Rashad Penny's the projected starter. Then you got Chris Carson, you got Kenneth Walker. This backfield is jumbled as well. This whole team's jumbled at this point. But yeah, just sort of getting to where these guys are going off the board. Looks like Kenneth Walker's going off first at 30th. Then you got Rashad Penny at 35th. And then you got Chris Carson a little bit further down than that. You got him all the way at 66th. So honestly, I would draft Carson a bit higher and the other two a bit lower. I guess, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I feel like, again, we don't know how this offense is going to be structured. Geno Smith is potentially starting for not like the first time, but he's going to be listed as a starting quarterback for this team for the first time. So don't really know how the roster is gonna be used. I mean, Chris Carson, I think he's at a good spot, but I feel like Rashad Penny and Ken Walker, they're a little bit too high.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if the Seattle team wants to any chance of making the playoffs, Chris Carson's got to be that guy. Like the way we've seen him in the past, if he's coming in fully healthy, you definitely got to bank in on that, and then sort of take him a little bit higher. But I guess their more productive position, I feel like, is going to be at wide receiver. Obviously, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are still there, and they're probably going to be the only two relevant receivers, as we don't know how much throwing the quarterbacks are going to do. Just looking at where these guys are going off the board, you got Metcalf at 18th, and then you got Lockett much further at 36. So you got a high wide receiver 2 and then a low wide receiver 3. Honestly, if you can get them lower than that, I think that's probably your best bet.
Yeah, I mean, Metcalf and Lockett, they are going to have decent seasons, but again, this is pretty much a new offense just because Geno Smith is going to be a new quarterback. So it's better to draft them as low as you can.
Yeah, either Geno Smith or Drew Lock. It's probably best just to take them as low as possible. And then I guess just getting to tight end. Noah Fant did come in that trade, so he's probably going to be the main guy. Looks like he's going off the board at 15th. Yeah, I agree. It's more like a backup, just like because of his talent. I feel like quarterback play is really not going to help him. But I guess, well, I mean, if it's Drew Lock, he knows Drew Lock, so that could be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, Noah Fant, he's a pretty talented tight end. So even if it ends up being Geno Smith, he still should be able to figure out how to make something work. Not that Geno Smith's a bad quarterback, but again, he doesn't have as much experience as Drew Lock does. So again, we don't really know how this offense is going to work, but I feel like he should be a solid backup, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Draft him as a backup. That's where he should be. And then I think we can both agree this Seattle team's probably going to finish fourth just because they don't have the talent to keep up with the other three teams.
Yeah, I mean, they do have some players. Like they have Chris Carson, they have DK Metcalf, they have Tyler Lockett, they have Noah Fant, but I mean, the Rams are going to be a really strong team. Cardinals are a strong team. And they have the 49ers. It's going to be really tough.
For sure. Yeah, this is a rebuilding team at this point. And yeah, we've gone through every single preview of every single division, every single team for fantasy. I guess, do you have any last thoughts?
I mean, I think this is going to be a really good season for both fantasy football and regular football. A lot of teams are either doing well with the rebuilding process or they have strong rosters. So we're going to see some really strong competition.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And yeah, can't wait for the season. Can't wait for fantasy. It's definitely going to be a great one for sure. And I guess I'll move it to you as we get into everything NHL.
For sure. And for everything NHL, we're going to be going over the Stanley Cup Finals right now. It's Colorado versus Tampa Bay. Colorado, they're giving Tampa Bay more than a run for their money. They're up 3-1. What are your thoughts on the series so far?
Yeah, I guess we'll get to what happened in game 4. It looks like Anthony Cirelli opened up the scoring around 30 seconds into the first period. So it was like right away. And there was no more scoring until the second period where McKinnon tied it up for Colorado. And then Victor Hedman put Tampa ahead again. And then going into the third period, Andrew Cogliano tied the game. And then what's hilarious is that you were talking about Nazem Kadri last episode. He returned this game and he scored the overtime winner to give Colorado the game. They're up 3-1 on Tampa Bay. They're heading home for game 5. I don't know. This series might be done now. I guess. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I want to say never underestimate the heart of a champion, but I don't know. It's looking kind of slim. I think maybe Tampa Bay could at least get one more. I think if they somehow survive this, they could end up going to 7 games, but it's going to be hard to tell.
Yeah, I think Colorado should take game 5, but if they don't, I think I agree with you. It probably will go 7 because I think if Tampa Bay comes home and it's like do or die, they'll probably win that one at home. And then in game 7, probably anything could happen at that point. But yeah, I'm definitely going to lean with Colorado just because like watching the way they've played. Yeah, I think even in the game that they lost, they didn't play bad. Tampa just like they just kept scoring and Colorado couldn't do anything about it. It's not like they were really playing that bad. A lot of shots are just going in and stuff. And then the other 3 games, they just dominated Tampa Bay for the most part. Um, yeah, Tampa just really hasn't had the legs to keep up with Colorado. They just look kind of slow. It's not like they don't have enough talent. It's just Colorado, they've definitely played less games in the playoffs this year because they swept a lot of their series. So they got a lot more rest than Tampa. So I think it's in that like, it's sort of gotten to that spot for them where it's like, yeah, the legs are really they're getting stiff for the Lightning, so they got to find a way to loosen up and win 3 games in a row if they want to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a couple podcasts ago, we were talking about how the Rangers, if they somehow make the Stanley Cup, they'd have a tough time winning it just because so many of their games are going to game 7. I mean, I guess that's kind of an unforeseen circumstance for Tampa Bay. They beat Florida. I mean, yeah, they beat Florida in 4 games, but Toronto ended up taking them to 7 games. New York, I think, ended up taking them to 6 games. So they didn't have as much rest as maybe they needed to. Colorado's an elite team. They're the best team in the West. So Tampa Bay needed as much rest as they could get. And unfortunately, it still looks like it wasn't enough.
Yeah, it's been really tough for the Lightning. It's still impressive what they've done these last 3 years, going to 3 finals in a row. If they somehow come back and win this series, it's going to be one of the greatest runs of all time. So let's just say that about Tampa. And if Colorado wins, then they beat one of the best dynasty, if not almost dynasties of all time. So yeah, definitely a lot of positives to take out of both sides for sure. And yeah, like I said, going into next game, I'm leaning with Colorado, but anything can happen with Tampa.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've seen Tampa down before, and it looks like they were going to be out, and they somehow found a way to come back. So, me personally, I guess, just because they've come back from dire straits before, they probably find a way to at least bring it to 7 games. But I think Colorado might have a chance to win the series.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you on that. I like the way they've played so far. They should be able to take it.
Sure. And I guess, what are your thoughts on each player so far?
Yeah, I talked about a couple players last week. I'll talk about a couple more. For Colorado, I'll start with Darcy Kemper. He was really solid last game. A lot of people are knocking him, saying that he's not a good enough goalie to be playing in the finals, and he really shut up a lot of haters last game with his like he practically stole that game for Colorado. Tampa should have won that, but he played really solid. So I'll give him his props. I guess shout out to Kadri as well for that overtime winner. And then getting to Tampa, Victor Hedman really stepped up last game. He got that goal. He's been playing big minutes. He's just that top defenseman that they've needed in these 3 runs. So great on him too.
Sure. And I guess going back to Tampa Bay, do you think there are any players that you think could potentially step up?
Yeah, I think it's got to be a guy like Stamkos. Like he wears the C for a reason. He's their guy. He's their captain, right? He's got to put in an early goal next game to sort of slow that momentum that Colorado has. Yeah, he's got to be that leader that's won them to 2 cups. I know he was injured for most of the first one, but yeah, when he did play, he stepped up. So yeah, he's got to be that guy.
And I guess we've seen Darcy Kemper I wouldn't say it's like a breakout season, but he's been performing really well. We could see him really high on draft boards for um, fantasy hockey. So I guess what are your thoughts on his draft placements?
I think he was going off in the top 5 this past season, and he pretty much performed up to that. So I think it's pretty safe top 5 pick for goalies.
Sure. And do you think Nazem Kadri could get another overtime goal?
Overtime, we'll see if there's going to be another overtime, but he definitely could score next game. He's going to be getting a fat contract in the summer too. I don't know if Colorado is going to be able to pay him after the season he's having.
Yeah. And I guess that about concludes everything for everything NHL.
All right, let's move into some big time basketball. And it looks like, yes, the first round of the draft has finished in the NBA. So let's just go over some of the picks here. We'll start with the Orlando Magic drafting Paolo Banchero. I know I'm going to butcher some of these names. He's a forward from Duke. I guess, what are your thoughts on Orlando taking him?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work. It could be like a best player available situation. He has a really high ceiling, so I could go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just considering that Jonathan Isaac hasn't really been healthy and he was sort of that like main guy they had at forward, I think he'll sort of just fit right in and be like a top player. I know he was solid for Duke this year. Um, yeah, I definitely think there's just, like you said, best player available, adding young talent. That's how they're going to eventually build their roster back up. So good on the Magic there. We'll get to the second pick of the draft. OKC taking Chet Holmgren from Gonzaga. He's like a 7-foot center. He's like a skinny guy like KD. I guess, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, it looks like his position looks like power forward, so we could see him in multiple positions. So he could be, I guess, one of those guys who are eligible in multiple positions.
For sure. I think people are underestimating him. He should be a really solid NBA player. Definitely a guy that OKC can use along with some of their other young talented players. So definitely excited to see what he's going to do. I'll get to pick number 3, Jabari Smith going to the Houston Rockets. They have a lot of good young talent, so adding him at forward is really solid. All right, and I guess getting to pick number 4, the Kings drafted Keegan Murray from Iowa. I know he was one of the standout players this year. He's a pretty solid forward overall. I guess, what are your thoughts?
I guess we'll have to see, mainly just because the Kings haven't had the best success, but I guess maybe Keegan Murray could be one of the standouts on this team.
Yeah, hopefully the Kings eventually do something because they've been up and down. They definitely need to have a team that wins. We'll get to the Detroit Pistons at pick 5. They take Jaden Ivey from Purdue. He's a guard. They already have Cade Cunningham. Now they add Ivey. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not really too sure about this pick, at least for fantasy purposes. I'm guessing Cade Cunningham would probably get more of the minutes, mainly just because he's more experienced. So Jaden Ivey, he's going to get minutes because, again, he's first round pick. He went 5th overall. He's going to get minutes for sure. Just not too sure where he drafted the fantasy.
For sure. And I guess we'll get to pick number 6 from drafted by Indiana. It's Benedict Mathurin from Arizona. He's actually a Canadian forward. It looks like the Pacers have a lot of good guards. They're just looking to draft a forward to sort of replace Sabonis. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers, they did give up a lot of talent to try to rebuild. So they're just going for, I guess, who the best players that they think are.
For sure. And then we'll get to Portland at 7. They take Shaden Sharp from Kentucky, another Canadian player, this time at guard. Obviously, he's probably going to replace CJ McCollum. And hopefully they can keep Damian Lillard because these two will probably play well together.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. And getting to pick number 8, the New Orleans Pelicans take Dyson Daniels. He's a guard. He's a big guard. He's at 6'7" from Australia. He's from G League Ignite. Yeah, I guess just sort of stockpiling best player available because the Pelicans have a lot of talent overall.
Yeah, I mean, the Pelicans, they could be a sleeper team this season. I think getting a player like Dyson Daniels is going to make them an even deeper team. He could potentially be like Alonzo Ball type of player. I mean, if I remember correctly, Alonzo Ball was on the Pelicans at one point, so he could play similarly.
For sure. And we'll get to San Antonio Spurs at number 9. They take Jeremy Sochan from Baylor. He's a forward. Yeah, I think it's a solid pick for the Spurs. I definitely think just getting that good young talent into the building, putting them around the other good talent that they have right now, I think it's definitely really solid. And then we'll get to the next pick. It's the Washington Wizards at number 10, drafting Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. He is a guard. I think, yeah, Washington has good pieces. They have Porzingis. They have a few other really solid players. I guess, what are your thoughts on him?
I guess he could be a good depth piece. I guess at least just for like maybe the first half of the season, because they do still have Bradley Beal, if I remember correctly. So not really too sure how they're gonna fit them in, but they still should have some decent wins, I think.
Yeah, for sure. They got Beal, they got Porzingis, they got Kuzma, lots of guys. So just sort of building that team. Hopefully they can get Beal to stay because that would be, I guess, really good for their, I guess, build or rebuild or whatever they're doing. We'll get to the Knicks now. They take Ousmane Dieng from New Zealand. He's actually a French player. Um, he's a forward. At this point, the Knicks just need to be stockpiling young players. I guess. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, just go for best player available, I guess.
For sure. We get to number 12. OKC back on the board. They take Jalen Williams from Santa Clara. He's a 6'6" forward. OKC has draft picks for days at this point, so it's just adding young talent at this point.
Yeah, I guess just adding young talent or develop them and see what happens.
For sure. And then I guess getting to the 13th pick, the Charlotte Hornets were off to take Jalen Duren from Memphis. Yeah. I guess, what are your thoughts on him? He's a center. And yeah, um, yeah, I think he's actually been traded to Detroit as well. So, yeah, he's drafted by Charlotte. Um, he was traded to the Knicks and then he was traded to Detroit. I don't know. A lot of craziness happened in tonight's draft, but I guess give me your thoughts on, I guess, just him as a center.
He should be really solid in the middle of the draft. Not really too familiar with his game admittedly, but I guess I was thinking Charlotte would want him just because they need some depth at center, but I guess they might have found someone else.
I think they traded the Knicks and got Dieng. So there was a bunch of picks that got swapped there. It's going to be interesting. We'll get to the 14th pick by Cleveland. So Ochai, I'm going to butcher this name. Agbaji, I think that's how you say his name. He's a forward from Kansas. Yeah, Cleveland just adding young forwards. I definitely think to pair with a guy like Mobley is really solid.
Yeah, I think so as well.
All right, and getting to pick 15, Hornets back up on the board. They draft Mark Williams from Duke. He's a center. Yeah, I think it's great for Charlotte to add a center to their team. Pretty young team overall. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess they're just trying to get as much young talent as they can at the center position. Just try to fill out the depth on the roster.
For sure. And then we'll get to pick number 16. The Atlanta Hawks take AJ Griffin forward. I'm not sure what's happening with John Collins, whether he's going to stay or not. Maybe this is a replacement for him. I don't know. Maybe he's going to play at the 3 to replace a guy like Gallinari. I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm guessing he could just kind of be like a depth piece. He can kind of be like shooting guard. He could be small forward, that kind of thing.
For sure. And we get to Houston back on the board. They take Tari Eason from LSU. He's a forward. At this point, like we said, some of these lower end teams, they're just drafting best player available.
I agree.
For sure. And getting to the next pick, the Chicago Bulls take Dalen Terry from Arizona. He is a guard. So probably a guy to play, I guess, as a backup in the rotation with guys like Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Lonzo being injured really hurt the Bulls a lot. So I think this is a good pick to kind of fill out the roster.
And I mean, Alex Caruso's there too. So you got probably 4 really good guards heading into next season, hopefully. Really solid for the Bulls. And we'll get to number 19. The Minnesota Timberwolves draft Jake LaRavia. And then apparently they traded him to Memphis. He's from Wake Forest. He's a forward, 6'8". Yeah, I mean, Memphis adding more big players. They already have Jaren Jackson, but I guess what are your thoughts?
I mean, they could be another team that, I guess, uses size to their advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that team, they're getting really good overall. And then Spurs back on the board. They draft Malachi Branham from Ohio State. He's a 6'5" guard. I think they're drafting guards to sort of replace what they lost by trading Derek White last year. Hopefully it's not because they're going to lose DeJounte Murray, because I definitely don't want that to happen for the Spurs. But yeah, it definitely looks like a solid pick for them. I guess, what are your thoughts?
I guess my only concern is you don't want to draft too many guards, mainly just because they don't have enough depth in other positions.
For sure. And we'll get to pick number 21. That's the Denver Nuggets taking Christian Braun from Kansas. He's a forward. I guess they had too much injuries with guys like Michael Porter Jr. I guess it's just more depth that they can add.
Yeah, I think the Nuggets, they had a few injuries. I think Jamal Murray was injured throughout parts of the season as well. So I think Jokic ended up having to carry a lot of the workload. So I think drafting someone like Christian Braun should be able to help them out.
For sure. And then getting to pick number 22, Walker Kessler from Auburn. The center was drafted by Memphis Grizzlies, and apparently he was traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I guess he'll be a backup center to Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
All right. And then we'll get to the next pick in the draft, and that's at number 23. The Philadelphia 76ers draft David Roddy from Colorado State. Then they trade him to Memphis. Memphis is acquiring a lot of players. 6'6", another forward. I guess, what are your thoughts?
I guess Memphis is going to have a lot of forwards this season.
Yeah, definitely. And getting to pick number 24, we have the Milwaukee Bucks drafting Marjon Beauchamp from the G League. It's a 6'5" guard. Yeah, I think Milwaukee can definitely add some more guard depth. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is actually, I guess, a good pick for Milwaukee, mainly just because they had some injuries at the guard spot. So made it a little bit difficult to kind of compete in the playoffs. So I think this should help them out.
For sure. And at number 25, the Spurs take Blake Westh, guard from Notre Dame. Spurs taking another guard. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of concerned about their other spots. Mainly, maybe they feel kind of confident that they'll be able to get some decent picks in the second round, but I would think you'd want to draft at least like one power forward or one center first, because there's normally a lot of guards now too.
For sure. And then Minnesota acquired another player, Wendell Moore Jr., who was drafted by Dallas at pick 26. He's a forward from Duke. Minnesota seems to be acquiring a lot of players too. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess they're just trying to get as much depth as possible and see what sticks.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get to the Miami Heat. They draft Nikola Jovic. I almost said Nikola Jokic. It was very similar. He's a 6'11" forward from Serbia. It's practically the same country as Jokic. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Well, he's definitely going to be getting a lot of comparisons to Jokic. It'll be really funny to see commentators say Jokic by accident when they meant Jovic, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of game he's going to have. I'm not really too sure about his game, but he should be really solid. I guess he's going to be backing up Bam, so they have another really solid center.
For sure. And then we'll get to pick number 28, the Golden State Warriors take forward Patrick Baldwin Jr. from Milwaukee. He's playing forward. I mean, just stockpiling depth for this championship team. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm guessing probably by the end of this season or sometime next season, his development's going to improve by a lot, and the Warriors are going to be even harder.
For sure. And getting to pick 29, the Grizzlies draft Ty Washington Jr. from Kentucky. Then they trade him to Minnesota. Minnesota acquiring a lot of guys. He's a 6'4" guard. I guess more depth behind guys like D'Angelo Russell, Pat Beverly, and Anthony Edwards. I guess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's probably going to be something like that.
All right. And then getting to the last pick of the first round, OKC back on the board. They take Peyton Watson from UCLA, and then they traded him to Denver. So Denver getting the 6'8" forward. We talked about how they took a forward last pick because of the whole Michael Porter Jr. injury. It's probably just doubling down at this point.
Yeah, I think they probably want as much depth as possible at the wing spot. So, yeah, I agree with that.
For sure. And I mean, yeah, that was the first round of the draft. We'll definitely come back in next episode with the second round, as it's not finished yet while we're recording. But I guess any last thoughts on the first round of the draft?
Not really too many last thoughts. I think a lot of the same position I notice has been drafted by a team. Like, for example, the Spurs, they drafted multiple guards. So I'm guessing they're feeling really confident about their ability to get other guards, or they're just happy, other positions, or they're just happy with their roster.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's a lot of teams that didn't even have first round picks. Obviously, the Lakers have traded pretty much all of theirs. You don't see Brooklyn here. You don't see Toronto here. Those are just a few of the teams. You don't see Phoenix here, obviously. So, I mean, yeah, some of these teams, either they got to draft in the second round or they just got to sign free agents. I know the Lakers love signing free agents. So we'll definitely see what's going to happen with that when we take a look at the second round in the next episode. So that's going to be the end of Big Time Basketball and the Fantasy Fanatics Podcast. Just make sure you check us out on Instagram and Twitter at FanFanPodcast. And then make sure to listen or watch this podcast. You follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. Just make sure you like, subscribe, share, hit the bell for notifications, leave comments, reviews, all that good stuff. And yeah, this was it was great that we could finish all the previews. We can take a look at the Stanley Cup Finals and the NBA draft, which was exciting. And we'll talk to you guys on the next episode.